All right, welcome to our series of videos helping you walk through examples in the tutorials. This is the first video for the Unit 2 examples. In Unit 2, remember what we're doing is reconstructing arguments. So we're taking arguments in English in paragraph form, and we are translating them into premise, conclusion arguments, or arguments that are more formalized. So arguments in standard form, as you might call them. And so the first thing that we're going to look at before we go down to our example right down here, one moment. Before we move down to our example right down here, we're going to walk through the steps for translating an argument. So the steps for translating an argument are as follows. First and foremost, you look at the paragraph and you're going to identify the main conclusion. And we're going to identify the main conclusion in yellow here. That's what we're going to identify the main conclusion with. Second, we're going to identify the main premises. And we're going to identify the main premises in a different color. Namely, we're going to identify them in red. Next, we're going to identify the sub-arguments. And so those are going to be the arguments for the premises that the conclusions are premises of. And so we are going to underline those. And so remember, sub-arguments, crucially, are arguments that have premises whose conclusion is one of the main premise. So the conclusion of a sub-argument is always a main premise. And last but not least, we have to look at what we've constructed. So the premises that we have, the main conclusion, and the sub-arguments, we have to look for any hidden premises. So any premises that are missing. These are premises that are not going to actually be written out in the paragraph, right? They're only going to be things that we intuit are necessary in order to make our argument deductively valid.
So this is a video on translating arguments from English into logic. So what we're going to do today is we are going to identify the structure of the argument in English and translate it into premise, conclusion format in logic. So the first thing that we need to look at is we need to look at the structure of translation. So what do we do when we go about translating arguments? What's the strategy? Like, what are the steps in the process? And these are the steps that we're going to work through. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to identify the main conclusion in the English argument. And then in this video, we're going to highlight that main conclusion in that color blue. Next, we're going to identify the main premises. And those premises, we're going to highlight in this color red. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to identify sub-arguments. And if you remember, a sub-argument is an argument or premises that support one of the main premises. So a sub-argument is a sub-argument for one of the things in red. And so it's an argument for the truth of a main premise. Last but not least, we have to identify hidden premises. And so hidden premises, if you recall from the tutorial, are premises that are not overt in the English argument, so that are necessary to add to the argument to make it streamlined and valid in logical form, but not necessarily manifest in the English paragraph. And so those hidden premises aren't going to be things we're going to be able to highlight, right? Because they don't show up in the English format. But they are things that are going to be necessary to add. And so we're looking for any sorts of premises that we need to add charitably, right? To make the argument, to render it as accurately and as strongly as possible. All right. So in the next video, we are going to take a look at our first argument. And this is our first argument right here. Tokyo is a rainy city. We should call Tokyo rainy because Tokyo gets almost as much rain as London. And London is considered a rainy city. London gets 1584 millimeters of rain a year, whereas Tokyo gets 1530 millimeters of rain a year.